good to have you back with us. You're just in time for Kenya's Choice 2022 right here on Citizen TV. A lot is going on even during the break. All right, so let me introduce my guest one more time. Mwangi is here, CEO and founder, Intel Research Solutions. Newton Khamasi is also with us, spokesperson, Democratic Party, and Arnold Maliba, public policy expert. Before I get to hear your views on how the electioneering period went, plus the results, Karen, I'll start with you. Your company is the only one that almost got this spot on based on what IBC's numbers were. And your numbers were very different from all the other pollsters. What made it so different?
First and foremost, we covered a larger population. We had a very huge sample size of 29,896 respondents with a margin of error ±1. So we were closer to the reality. You know, the higher the sample size, the smaller the margin of error. So that's what made the difference.
So what were the leading questions that the others didn't seem to get right?
I think it's the sample size because we posed one question. If elections were held today, who are you likely to vote for is the president of this country? Yeah. And you see, I think the difference here is just the sample size. If you cover 3,000 people, you're with a margin of error more than 4, really. So you'll get it all wrong. But when you cover a larger sample size, you'll reach a larger population where, and also, I think also methodology, because this time around we used a very different methodology. We used a face-to-face methodology or a call center where you call a respondent and they give you your views. But this time we use a text-based technology, where we only sent a questionnaire to respondents, whereby they can answer questions at their own convenience, you see, but within the time frame of that given study.
So going forward, what would be your advice to pollsters? Are you supposed to change your sample size and the people you actually ask the questions? Because there are those who say that if you ask the same breed and the same team that you asked a few moments ago, then it spoils the scientific analogy. You've worked in other poll stations.
Yeah, I'm a former employee of InfoTrack Research, and also I've worked with TIFA. I've worked with Ipsos.
So you worked almost across all board. And
I grew actually with time. I started as an interviewer at Ipsos. Okay. Then InfoTrack Research as the head of operations. Then TIFA Research, I was head of projects. And now I started my own research company. That is end of 2019. Again, we don't ask the same people because they're not supposed to participate in the same similar study within a period of 3 months. So there's one question that we ask. Have you participated in this kind of research in the past 3 months? So if answer is yes, we terminate the questionnaire. So we don't ask the same people. Again, there's also a methodology that we apply. Like, for example, a face-to-face interview. I cannot ask him, then I ask you, and I ask, you know, because at the end of the day, the people who normally live together, they think, or rather they have the similar kind of ideas. So we usually have a skipping routine. Even when we're also recruiting them from our database, like, for example, now this methodology that we used, we make sure that we recruit up to the ward level. Yeah, that's the smallest unit that we can cover when it comes to research. So the methodology is okay. I think what they're supposed to do is to increase the sample size so that they can give a majority of people a chance to take part, or rather to participate in research.
There are those allegations that most of you guys were compromised.
Which are most of those guys? Because me, when I look at my study, actually, all the studies that the national opinion poll that we've been doing, when you look at actually the slides, I believe you have the report. It is very accurate and very consistent. You know, and all the polls, Ruto was taking the lead, and I'm not a Ruto person, or rather Raila person. Me, I'm just a researcher. And we're just posting a question, and those are the feedback that we're getting from a majority of people that we interviewed. But
these allegations of being compromised, have you ever experienced that? Because it was something that was all up.
There was a time I was accused, because now my polls are all predicting that Ruto is ahead as compared to other research firms where Azimio was taking the lead. So people, those are very wrong narrative that I'm working for UDA. Which is a wrong narrative. I don't even think Angela Mbedo is working for Azimio. We are researchers. We're all researchers, and we are supposed to go to the ground, get the information, and project it to the public as it is without being compromised.
All right. Yeah. Arnold, what do you make of the entire electioneering period plus the performance of the IEBC this far? Before we get into the nitty-gritties of who's aggrieved where, how was the election held like a young person?
To be fair, IEBC of 2022 was platinum. The Chebukati we saw in this particular election was a gold standard Chebukati. We've not seen him in that particular frame. And he did his work so well until at the tail end, when, of course, it's not his mistake, again. We saw a little bit of what I call a national infamy, shame, that we are not supposed to actually show the world such like things, because our elections were not just what I would say fairly peaceful, but the elections went out smoothly. The counting went out well. We followed the law to the letter. And then at the tail end, you actually saw guys trying to actually get around it. I think that is something that we need to speak about boldly, that that was not a good showing. It was bad manners. The officer in charge of operation at Bomas that particular day honestly needs to answer some questions. You cannot allow the chairman to be roughed up the way he was roughed up. You know, when of course the chairman kama swara, you know that is not good. Whatever we saw on TV is bad manners. The people who participated in that actually need to be taken care of. Trevor, if we said anything stupid here, you will see the best of police officers here. But at Bomas that day, the chairman, an event of national strategic importance, the IG also needs to actually come up and respond, because that, the few guys that were there, that we actually have to speak about. So the performance of IBC was well. Because again, you realize that the lines were actually very efficient. The flow was quite fast, until at some point guys were worried that there was a low voter turnout. But it turns out that IBC has actually experience counts for something, that there was very good flow of lines. You will go in and, I think the team that has been there did very good work, and I think IBC is coming of age. And the Chebukati of this time and the IBC generally working until these other four guys showed up with their stories, they showed us that election is not rocket science. Of course, there were a few mistakes here and there, like the Bungoma and the Kakamega and the Busia issue, but IBC did well. Kenyans came out and voted, and we went home, and we've been fairly very peaceful. In the days of old, what has happened here would actually have caused a lot of problems nationally. Also, let us also congratulate the media. Except for that particular bit where they did tallying and then stopped, when we know too well that you had results of your own anyway. But the media did very well. They didn't help in inspiring up fires. The day IBC was announcing, I think there were a little bit attempts by a few people to try and spark emotions, but the media managed that. And you've realized that you guys have not stopped being objective just by managing that and putting the nation forward. So literally everybody passes except the few goons who were at IBC, at Bomas. The rest of us, actually, we should give ourselves a B+ for having done very well. Okay.
Yeah. Newton, we're with you here before the electioneering period, and now it has ended and the results are out. Of course, there's a bit of a contest here and there. What do you make of IBC's performance this far?
I will agree with Arnold Maliba for once, that indeed IBC performed exemplary well in all the processes till the tail end. And as I disagree to that bit when he's mentioning that at the tail end there were some issues. The only issues we saw is hooliganism at Bomas. But generally, Trevor, everything went smoothly. And even yesterday we were having a discussion. You see, right now, if you have any queries about any constituency, you just need to go to the IBC portal, you will download the form, and you'll have your facts. There's nothing like cooked figures and all that. The basic aspect of it, it was free, fair, and verifiable. Yes, with the challenges in Kakamega and Mombasa, of which we hope that IBC is going to conduct it very well. But again, the conduct of the four commissioners who walked out disagreeing with whatever Chebukati was going to announce, it was really uncalled for. That is one. Because, you see, it's just like an example. The Azimio guys are going to Supreme Court. You can imagine 3 don't agree, 4 agree. And then the 3 walk out of the Supreme Court building and go hold a presser at Serena. They look, they walk, they talk like compromised commissioners. And that is something that we really need to call out on that behavior, so that in future, when they take a oath of conduct, when they take the oath of office, we know that they are going to stand by it. Yes, if they had disagreed on something, there are better ways to handle those differences, Trevor. But coming out to cause some antagonism among the Kenyans by communicating something that is not truthful, factual. We saw them tell us, we don't agree with opaqueness. But the next day, they were more opaque than whatever they were trying to insinuate in regards to the election. So I believe moving forward, we have come a long way as a country. And I want to commend the peaceful nature of this country, the countrymen, because you can remember during the campaign trail, like our presidential candidate, that who is the president-elect William Ruto, advised Kenyans and talked to Kenyans and told them, don't be provoked. And indeed, Kenyans have refused to be provoked. Despite all these sideshows we are seeing, they have remained steadfast. They have put the country first. Even the world is shocked and amazed by how we are carrying out ourselves. And I give it to the Kenyan people that let us be that way. Let us not make politicians look more special than our country can.
Yeah, but Karen, there's an argument that people are just generally tired. In fact, it showed the turnout, the about 65.4% turnout, the lowest compared to the last two previous elections. During your research, did people respond to that question, and did you find out why they didn't want to show up?
We didn't ask that question, but during our research, a majority of people, when we started actually around June, doing the national opinion poll, we had a very huge number of undecided. And with time, it was not even going down, because even by the time we were doing the last poll, because we were not supposed to do another poll 7 days to elections, we still had 2.3% of undecided. So a majority of people are undecided. And again, also, Kenyans are tired because we vote for the leaders. And the same problems recur. Yeah. They are not doing anything. They're not performing. They're not accountable. So I think where we are as Kenyans, we are tired. We are tired. And we're looking forward again also to have good leaders who are giving us what we want. They're supposed to give us the services that we deserve. Most leaders, they get elected. They take the office, then they think now they own the office and they can abuse the offices. And I'm glad because actually a majority of youth, they came out this time, and even women looking for these positions because they want to make a difference. Because the people that we thought that they can make the difference, they've not been making the differences. If you realize even the people who went back looking for positions, like for example, the governors who had already finished their terms, some of them they're looking for other positions like senators and MPs, and they did not get those positions because people are looking for change. Yeah. Okay.
Maliba, speaking of performance and accountability, compare the two sides. What did Azimio get right or wrong? And what did the Kenya Kwanza side get right or wrong, having been in the whole melee yourself in the political sphere?
Just allow me to actually say something on what she says, that Kenyans are tired. Kenyans are not tired. I think we are used to high-stakes elections where there is a lot of emotions. And elections need to we need to thaw down to a level where elections is normal. I still insist that conducting an election is not rocket science. It's quite basic. People are just going to cast their vote. Elsewhere, people do it with marbles, stones, and they get their leaders. So sometimes elsewhere it was by lottery. You just spin something and then whoever it actually gets to. We have made elections too complex, and that then has necessitated, of course, there's the issue of trust deficit that has actually made us to end up with a very complicated and expensive legal and electoral framework. But Kenyans are not tired. They turned up. There's also a lie. I ran in a constituency where this station lies. That is Dagoretti North. It holds Kilimani, Kileleshwa, of course, Kawangware, Gatina, and Kabiro. And there's also a lie that middle class don't vote. Those guys turn up and vote. They are just as interested in the management of public affairs like any other person. With their chihuahuas, their children, they queue up and just vote. So there are a lot of fallacies around here that Kenyans are tired, middle class don't vote. All those are actually statements that are made without support of evidence. Now, as into what Kenya Kwanza got and what Azimio got, I am an Azimio supporter. For all my adult life, I've actually voted for Raila Odinga. And I actually need to tell you one thing, that before I even tell you about what we got right and wrong, I'm actually a little bit annoyed with the way the stakeholders and how we managed the Azimio election, specifically the people who held responsibility. They led us along. As an adult, I deal in data. As a public policy person, I deal in data, and I'm consulted here and there. On Wednesday, a client gave me their exit polls to actually just look at the outlier, because they weren't getting the outlier, and they wanted to give it to somebody else who had given them the job. So I looked at the data that they had. And already by Wednesday evening, we had sufficient data that would point you to where the elections were going, the results were going out. So I had that. Of course, I spoke to the other people, and there were a lot of calls, people coming in telling you, how is this, how is it turning out? But the Azimio side actually kept on leading us on, the supporters. All through, we are winning. And the data was pointing to the contrary. It was in the portal. There were a lot of Majitu stories about, initially the media had been hacked. Some of us are actually very old people. If I want to win an election, why am I hacking a media system? And there are no very complex systems in media houses, by the way. Just you, Trevor, here probably, and Winnie and the other guys in the gallery sitting down with some Excel sheets. So why am I hacking that if I want to win the elections? You are not declaring that. So I think the guys who are managing the public communication side of Azimio also a little bit of carried us as children, because they kept on leading us until the last end. The first time we see there is a problem is when Kanchori shows up and making noise and says that Bomas is a crime scene. Bomas was not a forensic audit center. It was simply a tallying center. But what we saw there was akin to a forensic audit. And when you see people starting to behave that, we realize there is a problem. Then the leaders on that, Baba is showing up at Bomas, and all of us are there. People are looking forward. That particular end, they led us, and people who actually did that, honestly, Trevor, must actually be called to account. Even as Baba and Azimio go to court, I think in-house, we also need to stop taking our supporters for granted. That you cannot be leading us on, even when there is evidence. There was the forms in the portal. Now we are being given all manner of stuff. Like, I'll tell you an example. I asked somebody within the system, or rather the tallying structure, whatever they were doing, I asked them, if you're talking about, when I talk about the kind of stories that were being given, probably we need to talk about that, because one thing that I have seen in the reports by observers has been misinformation. And it's not just misinformation generally, but it's also even to supporters when you are in-house. Like, for example, people are given this notion that, quote unquote, the system will take care of the election. Quote unquote, even getting to a level where you tell people that NIS got into the system, it put in forms that will help us and favor us, and then you ask them if they have gotten into the system and put in new form 34S, have they also gone into all the phones that took those forms at polling stations and also replaced that in galleries? And then they think you do not understand. So the guys also on the Azimio side played us, but then getting into the technical bit of it is that on Azimio we lost on stakeholder management. From where I sit, this is my analysis. This election was won and lost in Bungoma. Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Because Wetangula delivers about 255,000 votes to William Ruto. The difference between Raila and William Ruto is 233,000 votes. Yet Bungoma is the only county that William Ruto was able to flip completely in the way it's been voting. So stakeholder management, not just at that high level, but this election, if you look at it, the only outlier in the data, if you look at that data, the only trend that changes is Bungoma. So this election, in my opinion, was won and lost in Bungoma. And how did we lose Wetangula? Of course, we call him a tick. We call him, we will call him Davadi 70%, and Wetangula, we called him %. And we made all manner of jokes about it. The same thing speaks to what is happening at the moment after elections. You see people now almost breaking the door as they head to Kenya Kwanza. People who were initially in Azimio. Yeah. You know why? It still talks about stakeholder management. Parties that were not either ODM or Jubilee were treated so badly in Azimio. During the campaigns, you would be there, as in there was a lot of talking about zoning and everything else. We treated our partners. There was very poor stakeholder management. On that particular bit, Kenya Kwanza beat us fair. The other bit of it is that there was assumption. Lots of assumption. Of course, you cannot run a campaign based on propaganda only. Like I've told you, there are all manner of stories we're being told, things will be done this way. And then you ask guys, we know that results at the polling station are final. So when somebody's telling you that we will get some votes along the way, outside of Form 34A, where else do you get votes? You don't get votes along the way. You come with them as you go up. If anything, they can only reduce. But if there's any form that has got a problem, you go back to Form 34A for the presidential election. So there were a lot of, we ran a campaign on assumption, poor stakeholder management. But this does not point to the candidate, to the person of Raila Odinga. Even in a team, the manager of a team is important as the player himself, whoever manages a talent. There are a lot of good talents, but if they're not managed well. So even as we move on and ask those things, from where I sit, I might not be thoroughly legal, but I will tell you that I feel we might not even have a serious case. at the Supreme Court. I mean, that is the truth, because look at the 4 commissioners, for example. That is a chapter we need to forget, because number one, I think Kenya has got better people than those 4 people we saw there. If those are the people who, as in when Chebukati and the others exit, are going to take over the commission, then there's a reason to get worried. As in, leave alone the mathematics and everything else, they are not even consistent. I'll give you an example. Newton spoke about them trying to cause apprehension and everything else. A friend of mine was watching the announcement with her children, very young children. No, none of them is more than 14 years. Mm-hmm. Everybody was glued. And then you guys put in a split screen. Then they saw some other people looking like they are lost at Serena, looking like they want to cry. And on the other side, there was chaos. These young children started crying. You know, that kind of anxiety that the nation is waiting. And people show up, they tell us they'll give us a comprehensive statement going forward. If there's anything, those 4 commissioners need to go home. Because you cannot put the nation to apprehension to that particular level. Again, let me ask you questions, Trevor, that people don't want to ask. Did commissioners expect to vote over our vote? When it comes to the hierarchy of decision-making, the vote is supreme. The Constitution, in the first article, says all the supreme, as in sovereign power, belongs to the people. And they're giving us these Majitu stories about we did not agree. They were to agree on our results. Sure. Even as an Azimio person. You know, that is why one of the reasons why even the people in Azimio don't embrace those 4 commissioners. Because those guys are bringing in confusion that we don't want. They wanted to vote over our vote, that the rest of us vote, and then the commissioners agree on our vote. As in, what kind of constitutional thinking is that? They want, as in, they say that they are not taking ownership of the results. Who has invited them to take ownership? Not the Constitution, not the electoral framework. It is none of their business. This was not an administrative process where they were supposed to take ownership or anything else. We voted. By the way, even if Chebukati liked the results or not, it is none of his business. He's just a conveyor belt. He just responds and puts the results out there. So on that particular bit, I think for we in Azimio, we made some blunders. This election, like I've said, was won and lost in Bungoma. Yeah. So the one person who made the difference in this particular election is Moses Wetangula. Okay, we have to take a quick break here. When we come back, I'd like to hear what Newton thinks and what Karen thinks on both sides. What did they get right and what did they get wrong on both sides? But let's take that quick break and we're back with the feedback as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Keep them coming. See you in a bit.